Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm actually on time tonight. That's kind of a miracle. But now I can't see the notes because this is a new kind of Facebook stream. So I'm hoping that I can see. Okay, I see. Hi, Preet. Thank you for joining me. So I just want to say happy Good Friday to all of you tonight. What a great evening it is tonight. I heard a minister preach today about how Good Friday is not Good Friday and just the sorrow that went on when Jesus was crucified and the five that watched him be crucified. But for me, it's a Good Friday because he died for us. And because of that, we have a right to the tree of life. So that's good news to me. So it is a Good Friday for me. So tonight I am just going to be talking about feast or famine. I've been waiting all week to kind of discuss with this group about feast or famine. Right now we're in a season of they are feasting, they are kind of resting in their laurels, they're still working, they still are doing and going about their life as usual. They have their rent payments, they have their mortgage payments, their car is paid off, all of those things. But for some, it is a season of famine. They just don't have things. And so, it's just a hard time. Not only are people suffering financially, but health-wise, they're suffering as well. So as we all try to stay safe, I am just so excited to bring this topic tonight. So the character that I'm going to be discussing from my novel Revelation, she's a character that is not even in the book, but she's in the book. She's the grandmother and the matriarch of this family, and she was a woman of strong faith. And because of that reason, her imprint was on this family. Each character talks about her legacy, and actually talks about her faith. And so as I began to kind of just dive into this topic, boy, they were feasting off of her, even though she had been gone for many, many years. Even in the book, it talks about a canned food drive that they were holding in her honor. And that's just a wonderful legacy. I mean, I'm wearing this scarf tonight because, as I talk about Big Mama, I can't help but think about my own grandmother, who was a strong woman of faith, who loved the Lord and served him with gladness. You know what I mean? With gladness, she served our Father. And so I am hoping that you have some people in your family that has their imprint on you, an imprint of goodness, wholeness, faith, an imprint of just perseverance. Many of us African Americans have ancestors that just that have legacies of perseverance. And so I'm wearing this scarf in honor of my grandmother Ali tonight. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because, sometimes even though people are deceased, their memory lives on. In that they have made a contribution. So we don't talk too much about, hi Jackie, thank you for joining me. We don't talk too much about whether they were feasting or famining. We don't talk very much about, if they were poor or if they had a lot. What we talk about is the gifts that they gave us. So sometimes, even many people will talk about coming from humble beginnings, but boy, was that the best time of their life. And so, as we move forward, sometimes it's just not feast or famine. It's what you give, right? It's what your legacy is. And so one of the things about Big Mama, she gave a lot, and the people in her family was able to eat off that, right? So, as I talk about feast or family, I hope you got the notes for tonight's talk. But tonight, I just want to identify what it is to feast. Feast, when we think of feast, many of us think of Thanksgiving, right? I love Thanksgiving. My aunt puts on a feast every year. And it means just to have a large meal, right? To have an abundance, right? To be overflowing, right? It feels good to be in a season of feast where things are just overflowing and there is no lack, right? And sometimes, even if we look biblically and we look in our own lives, there's different reasons for feasts. Sometimes there's weddings, there's celebrations. Biblically, the king gave feasts. He invited all the nobles to come. and they came and they feasted for days. And there was different reasons for that, right? So one of the reasons I want to highlight tonight is pride. We see sometimes that people, they share of their feast, they share of their abundance because it gives them something back, right? It shows, hey, I got this. I have all that I need, and I even have what you need, right? You know, I think about King Xerxes, and he had this huge feast, and he called his wife Vashti to come, and he wanted to show her off to all of the people in the province and show all the people that was at his feast, and he wanted to show her off, but she didn't necessarily want to show herself off. But he was sitting in a seat of privilege and pride to say, this is my wife. She's beautiful. This is what I have. So much so that she said, you know, I'm not going to be your trophy. I'm just going to not go at all. And so, you know, that feast was a feast of pride. But sometimes there's feasts of community. Like I mentioned, my aunt, you know, my aunt, she has a feast for us every year. Generations come to her home every year. I've been going to her house ever since I could remember. Never once did she complain about not having enough. I'm sure she did, and she did have enough. But never once did she complain about having to clean up. You know how when people come out of your house, you got to clean up. Never once did she complain. After we leave, she never complained. It was about community for her, bringing her family together, a sacrifice to show that we can feast together, we can partake together and commune together. So not only sometimes it's feasts about pride, but they're also about community. The other thing that happens with feasts, sometimes it's to feel a need. Like I think of women and men who have eating disorders. They have a big old spread in front of them and they just can't stop eating because they have a hole deep down inside that they just can't feel. And they're trying to stuff things in and in and in. And not only does this happen with food, but this can happen with things. People sometimes, it's the latest and the greatest. I have this new iPad and that new iPad, and I have this new car and that new car. And I'm just pulling things in. It's not what I need, it's what I want. I'm just pulling things in, putting things in to feast. Right? But it's not really feeling that need. But famine is on the opposite side. You know, most people can recognize famine. They really kind of are able to identify that really quickly because a famine is a lack. It is nothing. You don't have what you need. There's a famine in the land. There's a famine in your home. There's a famine in your community. Right now many people are experiencing a lack because people that are feasting, they're going out and buying all the toilet paper. They're going out and buying all the canned goods. And people who don't have disposable incomes, they can't just go to the store and buy whenever they want. So the people who sometimes lack, you know, and they're in famine, it's really challenging for them. Because people who are feasting, they're taking everything. We can even begin to talk about our economy and our government and our business owners. That's a whole nother different discussion. But, you know, it's being in lack, having no nutrients, being barren. And, you know, I was just going through the Bible and it just reminded me of a certain topic that really addressed feast or famine. And so I want to share a little bit of that with you tonight. So I'm going to talk about 2 Kings chapter 7. You know, I was sharing this with my sister. I was so excited. I couldn't wait to get to share this story with you because it is not a well-known story in the Bible, but it's rich. So join me as I talk about this story. I'm just going to read a little bit of this passage. The story is about 4 lepers. And so I'm reading from 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 3. Now there were 4 men with leprosy sitting at the entrance of the city gates. Why should we wait here, waiting to die? They asked each other. We will starve if we stay here, because it was a famine in the land at that time. But with the famine in the city, we will starve if we go back there. So we might as well go out. We just might as well do it. We don't have nothing to lose. That's what they're saying. Let's just surrender to the Armenian army. And if they let us live, so much the better. But if they kill us, we would have died anyway. So they really are in a situation where there's not a lot of hope, right? I mean, if they go back, they might die. If they go for it, they might die. But they have nothing to lose. They were sold out. Remember that, being sold out. When you have nothing to lose, sometimes you have to give everything. So at twilight, they set out for the camp of the Armenians. But when they came to the edge of the camp, no one was there. For the Lord had caused the Armenian army to hear a clatter of speeding chariots and the galloping of horses and the sound of a great army approaching. And the king of Israel had hired the Hittites and the Egyptians to attack us. That's what they cried one to another. They thought somebody was coming to get them. Kind of like where we are now. We just kind of hold up in our house, rightfully so we should be. But, sometimes it can feel like it's a looming. Something is coming to get us. Now, I'm going to pull down and see if I can see any comments. So join on in if you have comments. I hear yes, indeed. Hi, Trent. Thank you for joining me. Hi, Janine. Thank you for joining me. So these lepers, they came up on the camp and there was nobody there because God had already sent kind of some wind and got these people, these Armenians, scared. So they left, and they left everything. This is such a good story. They left everything, right? So they had went forth. They panicked and ran into the night, abandoning their tents, horses, donkeys, and everything else. That sounds like a feast right there. And they left everything, fearing that this army was coming. So when the lepers arrived at the edge of the camp, these 4 lepers, they went into one tent after another, eating, drinking, wine. They carried off silver, they carried off gold and clothing, and then they started to hide it. They had so much abundance, they just said, we just gonna hide this stuff. This is some good stuff, and ain't nobody else here, so we gonna just hide it for ourselves. But finally they said to each other, this is not right. This is not right. This is a day of good news. Can anybody hear the good news today? That Jesus died. What good news that we're in today. And we aren't sharing it with anyone. So this is not right. We hiding this stuff and we're not even sharing it with anyone because it was a famine back in their city. So if we wait until morning, some calamity will certainly fall upon us. Come on, let's go back and tell the people at the palace. So they went back to the city. They told the gatekeepers what happened, that they went to the camp and that no one was there and all this stuff that was gathered there. And then the gatekeeper shouted the news to all the people in the palace. The king got out of bed and everybody came and they feasted right where those 4 lepers was. Now that's a good word. So I just was so excited to share this story tonight because this is feast or famine. 4 lepers are sitting there in famine. They're sitting there with no food. And if you know anything about leprosy, back in the Bible days, these people were ostracized. They were sent out of the city, right? Because they had leprosy. So they couldn't just freely move about. They were considered unclean. So not only were they ostracized and sent out, but people wouldn't even touch them. They wouldn't even come near them. I mean, we talking about 6 feet away, but people didn't even want to be in the same city as these people. So there are 4 of them sitting there together with nothing. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. They don't have their community around them. Like even now we have our community around us saying, okay, we're all going through it together. But they was just going through it by themselves, right? These 4 lepers. So not only were they ostracized, lacking social interaction, acceptance, they were even against the law to even interact. I mean, they were in a bad situation. So not only to be a leper, but also to be in a famine, to not have anything. So they had, I would say they had everything against them. But they had something. Even in their famine, they had something. They had their time, they had their talent, and they had their resources. They were just sitting there and they said, hey, we got time on our hands. We ain't doing nothing. If we go back, we might die. If we go forward, we might die. But We don't have anything that we can go back and forth. It doesn't matter. I mean, no matter what. I mean, we're just going to take that. We're going to go forward, but we don't have anything to lose. They had time on their hands. They also had a talent. So come with me here. I hope you realize this talent, because when I was reviewing this, it just was so sweet to me. Their talent was their courage. They had courage. In the space of hopelessness, they forged forward. In the face of opposition, they forged forward. Now, I don't know if you ever missed a meal, and I know I don't look like I missed too many in my life, but when, if we're fasting or we're missing meals, sometimes we are hungry. We don't even have the energy to move. We don't even want to do nothing. But they said, you know what? We're going to go forward. We don't have anything to lose. They had courage to move forward. That's a good word. And not only that, they had resources. What was their resources? What do you think their resources was? They had each other. They went forward together. They didn't do it alone. They had resource in one another. They didn't have the resources from the city, but they had resources in one another, and they had their minds. They thought about this thing. They mulled this over. They didn't just say, okay, let's get out of the city gates and let's go. They thought about, hey, if we go back, this may not work. If we go forward, this might work. So they used their own intellect. They used their own mind. That was their resource. So this is my story, right? I love this story, and I know you can see I'm excited. And join in with comments, please. But I'm so excited because this is my story. I am a person that is very stingy with their time, their talent, and their resources. So if you know me, I don't talk on the phone. I talk all day at work. I talk to people for a living. So when I get home, I don't want to answer the phone. So somebody would call me and I'm just like, I put my phone and leave it in my car so I won't feel guilty. I just don't have time for that, because I just don't want to lend myself to that. Now, I do talk to a couple of people, but I talk to my sister pretty regularly. I talk to my aunt pretty regularly, but that's about it. So, this really hit me at heart, right? Like, where's my community, right? Like, I don't give my time to my community, right? I don't give my talent to my community, right? Because when I'm kind of at home, I just want to be in my space. And it's just me and my girls and me and my husband and our little family unit, right? I don't like to kind of go out and socialize and do all of that, right? But as a Christian, shouldn't I do that very thing? Yes, everybody in my house is saved. They know the good news. They know about Good Friday. But the word calls us to go out, right? We're supposed to go out. We're supposed to minister to others, right? So I don't really give my resources in that way, my talent in that way. Even though I know the good news, I keep it in my little circle. So this really hit me right at my home. Please join in with comments. I hear my cousin saying, I know, Nikki, LOL, you know me, girl. I just kind of sit to myself, right? And so in resources, so sometimes I struggle with charity. Like I'll say, gosh, I'll see a homeless person. And one of the things that really kind of eats me up sometimes is when they have their kids out there, and I don't mind if it's just that person, but if they have their kids out there, I'm like, what are they doing? Is this, I know that the emotional damage that can cause on kids, but I don't know their circumstance. They might not want to leave their child in a shelter. So this hit me right where I live, right? And I come from a giving family, right? Okay, Janine, you with me on this. I come from a good giving family. Like my sister, she always giving her time and talent and resource. She would call anybody, she met him one time and she on the phone checking on him. That's just her. So her and I have a joke that, I'm just going to ride to heaven on her coattails because she's such a good person and have such a good heart. She is very, very giving, right? She's very, very generous. So, we have this thing that we talk about because she knows I'm kind of like, more reserved. So, but isn't that what God calls us to be? Whether we're feasting or famining, whether we're in abundance or lack. These 4 lepers, the one thing that we found, they went through all of those things. When they were in famine, they kind of had to use their time, talent, and resources. But on the feast side, they kind of got into overabundance of pride, right? Because what they did was they said, gosh, we about to hide this gold. That was their first reaction. Right? I hear Nikki saying very true, right? Right. Very true sometimes. So, these people, they just start hiding these lepers. Now they've been ostracized, right? So once they start getting stuff and they know their whole city is in a family, they say, forget everybody else. We gonna hide this stuff, cause they were kind of in a prideful overabundance situation, right? They weren't really thinking about community, but they shifted that mindset real quick. Because they said within themselves, this is where their intellect came in again. This is not right. This is not right. We need to go back and tell everybody. So not only did they shift from pride and overabundance, but they moved right to community. Hi, Lethe. Thank you for joining me. I hope you were here earlier so you can hear me talk about you, right? But they shifted from pride and kind of overabundance and kind of hoarding to giving. They shifted to their community. What could they do for their community? Everybody should join in this abundance, right? So, and then they ate. They filled their own needs, right? So they went from famine to feast, right? Which leads me to talk a little bit about when we're feasting. What are we doing when we're feasting? I had to really think about this myself. And I said, you know what? Nobody might live in the house that I live in, right? But maybe somebody does. So I'm going to just put it out there. When you're feasting, what are you doing? Do you have 3, 4 big packages of toilet paper in your garage or in your home, and somebody don't have toilet paper? What are you doing with your abundance? What are you doing with your feasting? We're all feasting. If you know Christ, you're feasting. Whether you're in famine, whether you're in lack or not, we're all feasting out of the goodness of God, right? We all have an abundance, overabundance of grace, an overabundance of mercy. We know that on Good Friday right away. So what are you doing with your feast? Where is your pride? Are you posting everything that you have? Oh, look at my car, or look at my new ring, or look at my new purse. Are you posting in a prideful, in a boastful way? Of course you want to show off what you have, but what does that do for your brother that don't have? And that feel like they will never get? Can it extinguish their hope? These 4 lepers, they said, we're going to die if we go back. No hope. And we might die if we go forward. Because they're not going to let us back into the city, right? What about your brother and sister that are in famine and have no hope? And whatever they feel like they're doing, it just won't be good enough. So are we posting? Are we hoarding? Are we kind of giving expressions of all the things that we have? Right? Where's our community? These lepers, they switched real quick. We got all of this. Somebody else needs to come alongside of us and feast with us. Isn't that what God did for us? That's exactly what he did for us. He left glory to come down and get us when we were hopeless. What are we doing when we're feasting? Or on the opposite side, when we're in famine? This is where I'm like, okay, I need to save all this money. I need to, I got college tuition, all of these things. But what are we doing when we're in famine? I think about the word of that lady that gave her last. She gave her last. It wasn't much, but she gave it anyway. Talk about famine. To not have anything, but to still give. I mentioned my grandmother at the beginning of this. My grandmother wasn't a woman that had abundance, but she always gave. She gave to her community. She gave to her grandchildren. She gave to her children. Out of a 1-bedroom apartment, she had a pull-out couch. She had a cot. She had everything just waiting to give. So as you are in famine, what are you doing with your time? Because sometimes it's not financial. Are you loving on people? Are you giving them encouragement? Are you calling the people that are elderly right now and that cannot get out of the house? What are you doing with your time? It doesn't have to be your resource all the time. If you're in famine, you may not have a lot of resources, but you have time. And you also have talent. God has given us all a gifting. He's given us all a talent. And the one thing I love about these lepers, they use their time and their talent to flip that situation. So if you're on unemployment, you're kind of getting state aid, you're kind of getting food stamps or WIC or whatever it is, you just don't have a lot, but you're sitting on a talent, right? That maybe you can flip, maybe you can sew, maybe you can knit, maybe you can do hair, maybe you can make jewelry, you can do all these things. Janine is on with me. I remember your mom, not saying that she was in famine, but she had a gift. She could put some stuff together in a second. She did the baskets for my wedding, beautiful baskets. She was a talented woman. And she used her talent to bless others. She made beautiful baskets for my wedding, just for me. So what are you doing with your time, your talent, and your resources? Either you're in feast, where you have all these resources and you could share, like these 4 lepers. I hear Janine saying, yes, she was awesome. She was awesome and a beautiful woman. And if you're in famine, what are you doing with your time, talent, and resources? On this Good Friday, I was so happy to share this word with you guys. Not a well-known word, but a good word. We're not lepers. We can move about freely. Let's use the gifts that God has so freely given on today. Thank you for joining me tonight. I really, 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 really just enjoyed talking about this with you guys. Thank you for your comment. Bless the Lord on today. Bless the Lord on today and on Sunday. I appreciate you guys joining me because I know there was Good Friday services going on at 7 o'clock. So I ask that the Lord would make his face shine upon each of you. May he bless you and may he keep you during this season. God bless.